Hello again everybody. I'm in the greenhouse today because it's a rather damp and blustery day, and in today's video I'm going to show you and give you some advice on potting on your plants. So when you've got them in little pots or you've grown them from seed and they've got to a point they are a well-established plant. Not only that, this would be for much bigger plants as well, if you've got bigger shrubs and so on in big pots. Just giving you the idea of when they need to be potted on and how to go about that. I'm going to show you just a few different ones. One is obviously some cuttings that I took a few weeks ago, and then some are some plants I've grown originally from seed, but they are now a well-established plant. The main thing to look out for when it comes to potting something on is the plant actually ready for that? And the best sign really for them is actually when their roots start to come through the bottom. So as the roots start showing out the bottom of the pot, this plant is ready for a bigger pot. It's saying, I need some more space. When it comes to potting them on, you know, you can go for a much bigger pot, and in time it will grow into that pot. But I find actually just potting it on into a good next size, and eventually I'd probably have to pot it on from this one. But he is ready now. These are Chinese lantern plants, which do spread and have really thick roots. So I'm going to pot him on into a pot about 3 times the size of that one to give him a lot more space so that he can grow and hopefully next year flower for us. When it comes to potting on, once you've chosen your pot, we always tend to add grit in the bottom of our pot, or stones or crockery, anything you have, and all that does is covers the holes to ensure all the soil remains in the pot. If you've got nothing covering those holes, over time, as you're watering and watering, the soil just comes out the bottom of the pot, and eventually it lowers and lowers. So to keep that soil where it is, also to deter slugs and snails in getting in the bottom of the pot, having like crockery, stones, anything, just something to cover the bottoms. So I've done that. I'm next going to fill it just with some general purpose compost with a tiny bit of vermiculite mixed in. The vermiculite, as I've said before, just retains the moisture for a little bit longer, so that I haven't got to keep watering these plants every 5 minutes. That doesn't mean don't water them, it just means it keeps the moisture there for just that little bit longer than it usually would. When it comes to getting your plant out of this pot, what I tend to do is using my 2 fingers around the plant. Don't squeeze it with your fingers because you'll damage the stem and possibly the leaves. Just holding it there. Tip the pot upside down, give it a squeeze, don't worry, it's not going to damage, you know, the roots or anything, and tap it. And generally, they will come out. And as you can see, this plant has absolutely loads of roots, and Chinese lantern plants, their roots are very thick and robust. So, I've now got my plant out. He's ready. A tip to give you, obviously once you fill with soil, you know, it's making that hole to get the plant in and pushing it in to try all, you know, to not damage it and so on. I actually use the pot. So I'll put maybe a handful of soil in the bottom of my new pot. A couple of soil, because what you want is where the plant was, the level of soil, you want him exactly level with the new soil. I'm actually now going to put my pot, it's empty, in and keep filling with soil. Just keep doing it. Doesn't matter if that little pot gets covered in soil, doesn't matter. Just push it down slightly, not too much, because you still want quite a bit of air in the soil so that the roots can grow through it. Once you've done that, pull your pot out and you'll have like a little hole down that is exactly just big enough to put your plant in. Put him in, and that's it, he's done. There's no need to be pushing it down, there's no need for that. Give him a bit of a shake, that way those roots will come into contact with that new soil. And that's it, done. Once it's done, water him and he will start to grow. Again, you can do that with any kind of shaped pot. I mean, these Gaillardia are in square ones, but it's the same principle. Bit of soil in the bottom, 2 fingers between, holding the stem of the plant, give him a tap, and again, as you can see, he's rooting tremendously round the pot, which means I need to just prise those roots a little bit, just to make sure he doesn't continue growing in that kind of circular or square motion. I want his roots to spread out. Next, put the square pot back in this one, backfill it just until it's up to the level of the pot, the old pot. Push it down a little, pull him out, and I don't know if you can see it, but there is like a little alcove where the square pot actually was, which means my plant should then just fit in nicely and not need too much fiddling or pressing of it or anything for him to be done. So that's those. Obviously, when it comes to doing your potting on your cuttings, now as you can see, these are beautiful plants, and if you remember in my previous video, your cuttings are quite small. You only generally have 1 or 2 leaves to begin with, and as you can see, these plants now have grown quite a bit, twice the size they were, and they are ready for their own pots. They're rooting out of the bottom, so what it requires is to get these out. Now, how I tend to do it is just put the pot on its side, again, push it a bit, and out they all come. And next, it is just prising them apart, just as gently as you can, till you have one of them. And as you can see how well rooted that cutting has grown. So it would have been about here when I took it, and now it's twice the size, and it's well rooted. So I'm going to get him into a pot now. Again, put your grit, crocks, whatever in the bottom of the pot. Fill it with a bit of soil, maybe just a handful or 2, just so you've got that little bit of soil in the bottom. Take your cutting and just kind of hold him central in the pot. Then fill in round him. Don't worry if you get the leaves covered in soil. When you water him, that will wash away. Just keep filling it in, press him down, just gently, not too harsh, because you don't want to snap him from his roots. And again, you only want the soil level up to the lip here of the pot. You don't want it right to the top. If you fill it right to the top, it's highly likely as soon as you go to water him, all that water will just pour straight off the pot. Whereas if you only fill it to the lip, you've then got this little alcove where actually as you water it, the water will sit there and just soak down into the pot nicely. And that's him done. And as I say, I get that obviously there are varying amounts of plants and sizes that you end up potting on. Here are some others I did earlier. Again, these Persicaria were taken from a cutting and have nearly trebled in size. So I've potted each and every one on individually in a pot. And again, you have got to think about what plant you're potting on. And do you want to pot it on again? Obviously these Chinese lanterns I will end up putting in a bigger pot eventually, probably not till next year now though. These sage, they will be happy in this size pot as long as I'm cutting and using it regularly and feeding it regularly. But if not, it may want an even bigger pot. These Persicaria are obviously a big shrub. They will grow fairly big, round, and they'll have multiple shoots come from them eventually. So I have given this quite a big pot to hopefully ensure it lasts until next year, and then I will pot them on either into bigger pots or they'll be put out into the garden. So do always think about what is the aim for this plant. Is it to go out in the garden eventually? Is it to stay in a pot? And so on. You have to take those things into account. And obviously the compost only has so much nutrients, so if you're going to keep it in a pot forevermore, it will eventually need feeding. Otherwise, the plant has absolutely no nutrients, and it doesn't get much nutrients from water. Water does keep it alive, but if you want a good plant that's healthy and flowers for you lovely and doesn't end up with any kind of diseases or infections and things, then it will need feeding. Obviously, when it comes to potting on your seedlings, that's a different matter. And I'm hoping to do a video for you next week to show you how to pot on your seedlings and at what stage you should be potting them on. And hopefully by then, some of our seedlings we'd sown a few weeks ago, the wallflowers, pansies, foxgloves, hopefully they will be germinating and they'll be at a stage where I can show you how to pot them on and at what stage you should be potting them on. I do hope this does help some of you.